I want to congratulate all the other awardees this evening, particularly my friend and colleague, Senator Duckworth. As Tammy said, we came into the Congress together, and coming to Congress is to some extent like going back to high school. You come in classes, and you become very good friends with your classmates. And obviously, Tammy is a true American hero in every sense of the word, and a great inspiration to all of us. And she's also a really deeply good human being. So it was great to have a chance to visit with her tonight. And our violinist, I want to thank you for that performance. Brava to you. That was extraordinary. It's hard to follow the first chair violinist from the Washington Opera, but I will do my best. And actually, I'm going to shift my comments, because they will be brief, to the song that you concluded with. I don't know where she went. Where did Michelle go? Oh, there you are. Thank you. So, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, I'm certainly not a music historian, but I believe that was written by a Jewish composer because of the experience in Nazi Germany. I believe that's the history of the song. And so in some ways, the song is about dark times and having hope that the future will be better. And I think that's actually a very appropriate way, in many ways, to think about the mission that your organization is doing. Because leadership is really about what's next. That's what leadership is about. What is next? What is next in a corporation? And I really enjoyed your remarks about your experience in business. What is next in a corporation? What is next in a nonprofit? What is next in government? Thank you. My attorney general from my state of Maryland, my U.S. attorney from my state of Maryland, thank you. Nice to be with you here, sir. What is next is the fundamental leadership question. And I think one of the issues we have in our country right now is the American people need to believe in something better. We need to believe that our country, which is so terribly divided right now, where American has increasingly been pitted against American, where the divisions are deep, the American people should believe that it can be better, that we can be unified, that we can have a restoration of this notion of common purpose that has always been the cornerstone of who we are as Americans, and I actually think is the beating heart of our great nation. I want the American people to believe that we can have that again. I want the American people to believe more in their elected officials, that they're honest and honorable, they're not divisive, and that they tell the truth, and they're honest about the problems we face as a nation, but also honest about our solutions as to how we solve them. I want the American people to believe that our future can in fact be brighter, that all these extraordinary forces that are changing our world, whether they be technology or globalization, things that have created so much anxiety in this country, that we can actually do real things to ensure that more of our citizens benefit from them. But to have that brighter future, to be a more unified country, to actually take the forces of change and bend them to benefit more Americans, we need great leaders, because it's the leaders that are going to tell the story about what is next for our country. And we will not have the leadership we deserve as a country unless all of our citizens are represented in leadership. No matter what their background, no matter what their ethnicity, no matter what their race, no matter what their gender, no matter what their sexual orientation, we need all of them to be so beautifully represented in the leadership of this country, whether it be in business, academia, the nonprofit world, and importantly, our government. Because until we do that, we will not fulfill our potential. And that's why I believe your mission is so important. So when people like Tammy talk about 20% of the Ivy League being comprised of Asian Americans, yet only 2% of the Fortune 500 CEOs, what that really is a talent drain. That's a talent drain because there's all this talent entering the workforce. But as people are promoted and as they're advanced, They're not given the same opportunities. And that's holding our country back. That's not allowing us to fulfill our potential. That's not giving us the future we deserve. That's not answering the question about what is next with as bright and as promising a future as we all deserve. That's why your work here is so important. By creating the framework for mentors, for people to go into the communities and take young Asian Americans and encourage them to not only work hard and take care of their families, but also do things to improve their communities, to improve their country, to improve their organizations, to stand up for the things that are important to them, whether they be journalists. And I enjoyed your comments, sir. You know, what happened with Jamal Khashoggi, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that should be mentioned in every public forum in this country. And people should be standing up and talking about that, whether you're white or you're Asian, because these are values that we all share. That's why your work is so important, and that's why I'm so honored to receive this award here tonight. But I think there's also a deeper meaning to your work, which is this notion of kind of shared humanity, which is part and parcel of the immigration experience. Now, in case you might have noticed, I am not of Asian American heritage. But I do have my own immigration family, like every immigration story in my family, like every American does. So my grandparents came from Europe, from Ireland and England. And one of my grandparents came to this country in 1923. And he came to this country with his mother and his 7 brothers and sisters on a ship from England. And he came into Ellis Island, like everyone did at the time. And back then in Ellis Island, what they did for new immigrants coming to the country is something called a 6-second physical. So they looked at the new immigrant arriving to this country, and they looked at them for 6 seconds to make sure they were an able-bodied man or woman, because that was the test for immigrants coming into our country. So my grandfather, who was a little boy, he failed the physical, and the reason he failed the physical is because he had one arm. He lost his arm as a little boy in England, playing with a World War I shell that hadn't exploded until he played with it. And so he lost his arm. And back then, we didn't let disabled people into our country, if you can believe that. So he was scheduled to be deported. They sent him to Staten Island, but his family got a hearing, an appeal, in front of a judge. I suppose it was a judge. We haven't been able to determine this. The appeal was held in the Great Hall of Ellis Island. He was there with hundreds and hundreds of people. He was a little boy. He was about 7 or 8 years old, probably in the back of the room, terrified. And the judge walked in, and the judge was putting on his robe. And my grandfather saw that the judge also only had one arm, which was the only reason he was actually let into the country. Because he was disabled, he shouldn't have been let in, but the one-armed judge let in the one-armed boy and told him to make something of his life. But there was a little bit of shared humanity that allowed someone who shouldn't have been in this country to come in this country. He worked in a pencil factory his whole life, because that's the only job he could get as a one-armed young man in this country. My dad was a construction worker. I was the first in my family to go to college. Because of the blessing of a great education, I became a successful business person, the youngest CEO in the history of the New York Stock Exchange, and now I have the privilege of serving in the Congress of the United States, which is the great privilege of my life. But all because of some shared humanity. All because someone believed in the values of our country, believed in this notion of opportunity, believed in this notion of the American dream. And we need that today. Because if you look at what's going on our southern border right now, we need a little more shared humanity. We need it. And that's also what you're doing. You're reminding people how important the immigration story to this country, this beautiful quilt that gets woven with each generation of new immigrants that come here, where they maintain their identity and their connections to their community and their heritage, but they all get woven beautifully into this wonderful continuing story that is America. And so that's why I'm so honored to receive this award from you here this evening. And I want to thank you, Stu, Ambassador, some of my friends who are here, but truly everyone who's here and supporting this great organization. It's doing good work, right? The cause is important. And we all hope to live in a country where everyone is fairly represented in all aspects of leadership, because it's those leaders who will tell the story of what's next. And we all know what this country can be and what we want it to be. So let's promote those leaders so we have that beautiful story continuing. Thank you for having me.